Let's discuss this now with Mukesh Kapila in Geneva. He was a special advisor to the UN Special Representative in Afghanistan and then a special advisor to the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. Professor, thanks again for your time. And given your history, you've clearly worked extensively with the UN. And from the work and the conflicts you've navigated, how effective do you feel the organization has been in fulfilling its mandate?
Well, if you take an 80-year-long view, then actually the UN was highly effective in the first part of its life. Many post-colonial wars were diffused, new nations were ushered into the world, and I think many boundary problems were solved by referring to the UN Charter and UN mechanisms for peacemaking and peace building and peacekeeping. But now, in the later part, in the last 20 years perhaps, this has all gone backwards because the world has changed so much, and the UN Charter and the UN member states uh, have also evolved, not the Charter, but the member states. And so, why we're now in a completely new world where the Charter's prohibitions no longer apply. So, I think at UN at 80, doesn't mean reverting to the past. It means inventing, to be honest, a new UN rather than hankering for its golden age long time ago.
What do you think a new UN should then look like, and what principles of the first charter that we have should then be used in something that is new?
I think the principles are fine in the charter. The problem is the unequal power relationships within the UN system, and not just in the Security Council. Also, the fact is that there is no ability to hold member states accountable for the wrongs that they do, and also there's a disconnect between listening to the aspirations of discontented people around the world and the actions that follow. So it's not about trying to suppress violence, which was in effect what the UN mission was in the first part of its life. But today we can't get away with that. The UN has to address the underlying causes, the root causes, not just paper over them with peacekeeping forces, Security Council resolutions, development aid, and such like. That the world isn't going to be satisfied with that. So looking at the root causes of discontent and disgruntlement around the world, including basic disempowerments that many communities feel, many nations feel, I think is what the UN's new mission should be about. But of course, as your story said, this depends on member states themselves playing their part, and whether or not that will happen is anybody's guess.
And is that what it really comes down to here? The member states, and then the very powerful member states would then also have the veto at the UN Security Council, which means, like we've seen since 2022, when we had the Ukraine war, then Sudan civil war, then the war on Gaza after Hamas's attack on Israel, and then over the last few days, we've had Iran and Israel, and all of this was happening after the world had gone through a coronavirus pandemic. We've been through a lot, and still some regions are experiencing this violence. And it feels like we're at a point now when the world is more dangerous and unsafe than it's been in so many years.
The world is certainly more unsafe. And it's unsafe not just because of the numbers of wars that are going on, as the Secretary General correctly has said, but also these are wars without mercy. These are wars without limits. And so they're wars without rules. Now, of course, you see, it's not the UN that fights wars. So I don't think it's right to lay on the shoulders of the UN blame the UN for the problems, or to seek solutions from the UN. It must be, of course, the behavior of UN states. Having said that, I think it's important that the bureaucracy of the UN, and I don't use the word bureaucracy in a bad way. I just mean the institutions and different capacities of the United Nations system, which is more than just its secretariat in New York. It includes a whole range of other agencies all over the world. I think they have lost the confidence of the people, we the people, the opening words of the UN Charter, because of ineffectiveness and inefficiencies in so many spheres of life, which is important to people, not just war and peace. Now, UN reform, therefore, has to be at the center of UNAT as much as the political changes that we all want to see in terms of a fairer world. I don't think, to be honest, the current UN officials are approaching the business of change with the degree of purpose and courage that is required. And without that happening, I think the peoples of the world are going to continue to lose confidence in the United Nations. And of course, the countries of the world who already have their own axes to grind in different ways don't want a strong UN. And that's the dilemma we are currently facing in.
And what a dilemma it is. Professor Kapila, it's always great to get your take. Thank you so much again for speaking to us.